I'd say, like,
it's the worst.
but if you would get the chance to do the greatest job in the world, the job that you always dreamed of, but on top of it, you get to do it with your two best friends in the world, why would you do it this way? Like, it makes so much sense. We're having so much fun, the three of us together. Like, it's second nature for us. It's better this way. Like, you take the greatest moment of your life and you just make it better because you're doing it with friends.
But it's not for everybody. It's very unusual for us at work. We always work like that. We began to make short films like 18 years ago.
Yeah, early 2000. So
as a group of friends, just having fun, and we kind of kept that spirit. And I don't know, for us it works really well, but maybe it's because it's a family business.
Yeah, and there's not a day we don't talk to each other or like hang out with each other. We see each other all the time, and we still haven't killed each other. So, you know, over
so good. We're still friends.
Over 20 years of doing it together, I think we'll always do it together. No, like, personal life is a myth if you're a director.
I remember how it felt like.
Oh, yes.
But it's funny because we've been a couple for 18 years as well.
Yeah.
And we kind of have to take dates where we don't talk about job, and it's hard.
You still end up.
Exactly.
Yeah, we still end up talking about movies and.
Directors right now all grew up during the 80s, the directors that are making films, and it's the same thing. Like, if you look at like gods, like Steven Spielberg, like those giants of directing, their film was very influenced by the 1950s because that's where they grew up. So if you look at Indiana Jones and all those films, it's really connected to their own movies of their childhood. And it's the same thing for us. We grew up through the 80s, so we are influenced by the movie we grew up with. And I think that's why we see a lot of 80s influence film right now.
Yeah, and there was a way to the storytelling in the 80s. It was just like a different pacing, a different kind of overall feeling as well. There was like practical effects. Everything felt more real and more magical. I feel like maybe because that's what I'm used to when I was growing up. But yeah, it was just magic.
I think it's in our DNA. One thing I have to say is that it's gotten harder to make period piece because the further you go, the less pieces of set design and it's harder and harder to find. If you have really big budget, it's easy, but we're doing smaller indie films, so people in artistic design needs to be very, very clever to find all the pieces that as director we request, that we demand. And
I guess a big part of our small budget went into having old cars and stuff like that, which
that brings other problems, because the cars were really from that period of time, but they wouldn't run, most of them. Like they had a ton of mechanical problem. The car that Woody actually drives, when he steals his mom's car, actually every time you see it move, or 80% of the time you see it move, is actually us pushing it into frame because the car wouldn't work.
And I guess for the rest of the music and the mood of the movie, for us it's really, like we love those movies, so it's easy for us to make that, and we're all on the same page as well. So it's kind of, I don't know, it's in our second nature.
Yeah, and also one thing that was important for Summer of '84, it's really grounded. So, and we didn't want it to feel like fake '80s, like with neon colors and like how people think they remember the '80s, but we really wanted it to feel genuine and to feel like it was really the '80s, which were, it's in the suburbs as well. So it's like 84 was more like of a feeling of the late 70s, so we really wanted like to have like the brown tones and stripes and everything, rather than the like colorful things that weren't there yet.
And yeah, because people wouldn't change their old wardrobe because suddenly it was the 80s, like, or change their living room set because it was the 80s. Like it took time.
Yeah, and we were really careful to not do too much references and to do a nostalgia fest, like, oh, remember that. For us, we have kind of those references, but it's really in the
background.
In the background, we prefer to have the story in front.
I think in some form the movie is all a huge metaphor about growing up, because it's about kids that are being forced into adulthood, and they're at that weird age at 15 where, you know, you're not an adult but you're not a kid anymore. Like, you still want to play outside with your friends, but you're still getting interested in girl. Like, you're in that weird moment where it's hard to define who you are, and they're forced into adulthood by the end of the film. And we think that we are kids ourselves, like we'll be forever kids, and we believe that adulthood is absolutely the worst. Like, we force things that now, since you're an adult, you need to think this way and you need to act this way. And I think we explored that a little bit with the film.
Well, if I can add, for me, we kind of have this, like the whole nostalgia thing. We want to remember the 80s, and it was great, it was awesome, but in reality, it wasn't that great. It was more of a facade, like the suburbs in which our characters live. It's all, it looked great on the outside, but inside, it's we have a lot of broken family, and a lot of divorce.
Divorce. And in the 80s, it was a big deal. Like, to get, now everybody gets divorced. Like, it's like you get married on Monday and you divorce on Tuesday.
And there's also, sorry.
I just wanted to add that we kind of did the movie in the same way that you feel safe. You kind of, oh yeah, I know that kind of movie. I saw plenty of those. We're pretty, everything's okay, but like, I don't want to spoil anything for those who haven't seen the movie, but you're not quite safe in Somewhere Beautiful.
Yeah, we explored as well the theme of stranger danger that happened in the 80s in America, where that false feeling of security in the suburbs just was broken. There was a shift, and people started locking their doors because there was more story of kids being abducted, and it just hit the news. Like, serial killers are now a thing, and it's also something that we wanted to. Well, the whole script is based on that, so it's
in North America there was really a wave of kids kidnapping during the 80s, and it was something like parents started to get paranoid and be really afraid for their kids, and people started to lock their door in the 80s. Like, before in the suburb, everybody felt safe. It's like a safe space. But suddenly, you know, your neighbor could be John Wayne Gacy or Ted Bundy or any of the crazy, scary serial killers that hides in plain sight. Like, they had families, they were functioning in their society, they had jobs, one dressed as a clown and entertained the other kids in the neighborhood. Like, nobody in the neighborhood had any idea that John Wayne Gacy had a crawl space full of bodies. And that, to us, it's absolutely scary that these monsters are able to hide in plain sight and be actually functional, but have those impulses that they cannot control and do those terrifying, dark things. And
humans are scary.
Yeah, humans are scary. Humans are absolutely terrifying.
The writers really base the boys on their friends from when they grew up. And it's really fascinating for us because when we read the script, it felt like it was also our friends and ourselves that we recognize in them. So I think that's why they feel so, like, not just a stereotype, but like real kids. So
yeah, and there's something super interesting in that you were born in the US or in Canada, and I'm sure Europe, we all had, during the 80s, we all kind of have those friends, like that small group of friends that one's a little bit more rebellious, and it felt so true that those characters actually existed. So, and at the same time, I feel like we were a bit of a mixture of all of them ourselves. Like there's a little bit of aspect of all of them that that we were ourselves growing up.
And we have to give props to Corey, Graham, Caleb, and Judah because they were so professional and they did an outstanding job. And we really wanted to feel that they were really friends. And I think they...
Oh, yeah.
Well, they did become friends in real life. So, and I think it shows in the movie.
And we had conversation like us with those 4 kids. And some of the conversation were very complex for younger kids. Like, very complex feelings and everything, and they would understand. And a lot of depth in those kids, like very, very smart kids.
And especially with the schedule that we had, which is a small budget. We didn't have the luxury to take our time. It was like sometimes we only have time for 2 takes, and they were nailing it the first takes. So.
But what we did is like every off time we had like between camera setups or anything, we would rehearse. We would work on the character, we would do everything so that when they get in front of the camera, they would be absolutely ready. And it was great working with them. Like it was easy because they worked really hard. Yeah. They worked really hard.
The casting process was long because we really wanted to find the perfect boys to play them, but at the same time they really all came together like one day or like the weekend before we started shooting. So that's when they met for the first time. So it was really good to see them like hanging out and developing that chemistry, and that it worked so well once they worked together. So it was a blessing for us.
Yeah. Oh, hopefully, if you invite us, we'll come. And we're writing it right now, so...
We actually took a break to be here, but once we go back to Montreal, we're going to, in our writing dungeon, as we
call it.
But yeah, hopefully we'll be back.
Okay, awesome. We're going to look forward for that.
Thank you so much.